I'm carefully reading all the scores of experiential confusion, entanglement, so that I may see a new model of existential dignity in the horizon. A new, firm, logical posture. A new model of standing in the fields. Discern a new realm of existence. So that I can touch a new kind of body.
Wittgenstein. Sometimes it seems as though mathematical discoveries are made by performing what one might call a mathematical experiment.
I'm carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement.
For example, the mathematician first notices a certain regularity and then proves that it had to be so. And this seems to point against what I said, that perhaps what we call discoveries in mathematics would better be called inventions.
I am carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement.
Turing. One could make this comparison between an experiment in physics and a mathematical calculation.
I am carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement.
In the one case, you say to a man, "Put these weights in the scale pan in such and such a way, and see which way the lever swings." And in the other case, you say, "Take these figures, look up in such and such tables, etc., and see what the result is."
I'm carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement, so that I may see in the horizon a new logical posture, a new milk of dignity.
That perhaps what we call discoveries in mathematics would better be called inventions.
A new posture of vision. New skies of existence. I am carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement, new dimensions of friendship, new definition of love.
Wittgenstein. Yes, the two do seem very similar. But what is this similarity?
A new kind of body, a new kind of temple. A new kind of temple.
That perhaps what we call discoveries in mathematics would better be called inventions.
a new kind of reverence. A new kind of monumental posture.
One could make this comparison between an experiment in physics and a mathematical calculation.
A new kind of substance of lovemaking. A new lubricant for intelligence. A new lubricant for intelligence. Finding my own body within this realm of dignity.
Turing. In both cases, one wants to see what will happen in the end. One could make this comparison between an experiment in physics and a mathematical calculation.
Finding new models of spines, new logical scores of prayer. Finding new fragrances of logic. I am carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement. Finding new perfumes of presence. Finding the new maps of logical posture. The new configuration of the temple of reality.
Wittgenstein. Does one want to see that? In the mathematical case, does one want to see what chalk mark the man makes? Surely there is something queer about this.
The new configuration of this temple of reality. The new marks. I am carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement.
In both cases, one wants to see what will happen in the end.
Reading the ancient scores on the body of this contemplative beast.
Does one want to see that?
Reading the ancient marks on the vast body of this contemplative beast.
Does one want to see that?
Reading, finally, the ancient markings on the petrified body of this temple.
Does one want to see what he will get if he multiplies, or what he will get if he multiplies correctly, what the right result is?
Reading the ancient marks onto the petrified body of this ancient temple.
that perhaps what we call discoveries in mathematics would better be called inventions.
Turing. One can never know that one has not made a mistake.
I am carefully reading all the scores of existential entanglement.
Wittgenstein. Russell said, "It is possible that we have always made a mistake in saying 12x12 equals 144. That perhaps what we call discoveries in mathematics would better be called inventions."
The finally adequate contemplative device, the finally purified union between ecstatic contemplation, the fields of intelligence,
But what would it be like to make a mistake? Would we not say, this is what we do when we perform the process which we call multiplication?
the motions of aspiration, the motions of prayer, the logical postures of divine union, finally finding the right scale, the monumental posture, the monumental language.
144 is what we call the right result.
Recovering the ancient language of raw, paralyzed, petrified, purified, perfected experience, finally accessing the vaster forests of contemplative beasts.
Russell goes on to say, so it is only probable that 12x12 equals 144.
Finally finding the vaster forests of contemplative beasts. Finally uniting with the armies of the contemplative beasts of history.
But this means nothing. If we had all of us always calculated 12x12 equals 143, then that would be correct. That would be the technique.
Finally discerning their exact nature
Does one want to see
in
that?
the oceans of precise spirit definition.
That would be the technique.
Finally discerning
Does one want to see that?
the forests of their creative powers
That would be the technique.
into the crystallized scriptures of this reality.
Does one want to see
The
that?
crystallized, established scriptures of this reality.
That would be the technique. That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique.
That would be the technique. That perhaps what we call discoveries in mathematics would better be called inventions.
That would be the technique.
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 That would be the technique.